Previously on Kawaii-Fi Quest.
What is anime?
I'm glad you asked.
Well, we're off on our adventure again.
Yeah, the king really wasn't very happy with us, even after we explained what anime was.
I think that actually made things worse, you know.
Really?
What was it he said again?
You get one more chance, heroes. One more. And I'll be sending you one of my most trusted advisors to keep an eye on you. You. Sorry.
Is he still here?
Maybe?
I wonder who this advisor will be.
Well, apparently, we'll be meeting them in this town shortly.
What, here? In Mura Village, this town we've been staying in for the past fortnight?
Good segue.
Wait, isn't Mura the Japanese word for village?
So it's village? Huh, I don't know what I expected.
Huh.
Emergency quest! Emergency quest! We need all able adventurers to assemble at the front gate!
Should we go help?
Well, I've got to get my dragon from the stable if I'm going to fight. Can we maybe skip this one?
But Coco, people are dying. Monsters are attacking. We should go and watch.
I hope you're all ready for this. I was born ready.
I'll get snacks.
It's over 9,000!
Nani?
Configure the language logic interface for Japanese.
Kawaii-Fi.
Kawaii-Fi!
Konnichiwa and welcome to a new episode of Kawaii-Fi Radio, the podcast where we look into the world of anime and manga. I'm your host Kyle, and joining me are my super dodgy co-hosts Coco and Kenny. How are you two doing?
G'day.
Great!
And you might be wondering why I'm calling them dodgy, and it's to do with a discussion we've been having about one of this season's shows.
Yeah, we've
Yes.
been talking about Africa No Salaryman, which has finally dropped, and it's not short form.
Oh, it's
It's long
amazing.
form, and-
We did mention that we thought it might be short form because of the previous run, but no, it's full 22-minute episodes.
And we spammed a good, 2 or 3 episodes?
yeah, it's a good two straight up.
And, oh man, this is great. It's like a really, really visceral, slightly more mature version of Agretsuko. It's fantastic.
I was saying that I feel like the
Because you watched
animation.
Agretsuko, haven't you?
I watched maybe an episode. I just couldn't get into it.
That's fair.
But I should probably give it another go because it may have depended on whatever, whatever mindset I was in at the time. Maybe I wasn't ready for a great.
Well, I mean, Agretsuko is a Western production, and this is obviously a Japanese production, so very different art styles and approaches.
Very similar story, though. It's animals working in office buildings.
yeah, which is where we got in trouble last time because because in one of these episodes, there's a pig.
There's a pig who's got a pet pig, and that led us down a question of ethics, which led us to a very interesting conclusion, which we are not going to repeat here
Well, yeah,
because it's wrong.
The whole thing is that there was a feud between a pair of artists I follow on social media about animal people that have animal pets. It's just, what does it say about the rules of the world that you're setting up in that? It doesn't make any sense.
Either way, the three main characters in this show are fantastic. I'm a big fan of the big cat,
Yes,
Oh,
the
he's
lion.
so
Lion-san,
lovely.
but the
I'm a
toucan can
big
die
fan.
in a hole.
I'm a big fan of the lion's daughter.
Oh yeah,
She is a live wire.
which we didn't pick up on the connection to
No,
until
until
like the
the
second
end.
episode.
Yeah, it's like
that
there's
episode.
an altercation between the toucan salaryman, the lizard salaryman, and 2 schoolgirls, one of which is a young lion
and
on
one
a
which
train.
is a gorilla. Turns out that lion is the big cat's daughter.
Their boss's daughter. And yeah, that wasn't really made explicit. We sort of figured it out through pseudo detective work of just watching the show and going, hey, there's a connection.
Yeah, a very obvious connection.
Yeah, the toucan is proper dastardly too.
He
Oh,
is.
He's
I
not
wonder if
an
that's
ethical
actually based
person.
off on animal behaviour
Well,
from
toucans
toucans.
are very cheeky.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
And they are funny birds. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this all got us questioning because there was an episode where there was a group date, I think
Yeah,
it
it's like a mixer. That's what they call it, a
yeah.
mixer.
And it was all toucans on
Yeah,
one
but
side.
there's the toucan and his equally dastardly friends.
Yeah, so the four toucans on one side and then, 4 mixed animals on the other side. One of them being a pig, and everyone was acting as if the pig was the pig girl
she
who's
wasn't,
like a
she wasn't
daughter.
speaking, was
Yeah,
she? She
no.
was just like...
Chowing down.
Yeah, and then
yeah.
the punchline being is that said pig is actually the pet pig of the pig girl.
The pig girl who couldn't make it to the mixer.
So yeah, that's a great twist, and the toucan gets exactly what it deserves.
Now, speaking of pets, we should talk about our second favorite entry, Kimoko Michi, Rise Up.
Oh,
so
it's
this
great.
is Isekai Wrestling, written by the guy who created Konosuba. It's amazing, and I love every bit about it.
And they get they get all of the movements right. Like the suplex is just animated perfectly.
Oh, it is.
And it's using a lot of the camera angles that you'd see in professional wrestling as well.
It is.
So I'm loving this. I think he's
love it's not much of a spoiler, but in the second episode he ends up wrestling an orc. And
Yeah, he
it's literally was like watching a pay-per-view show, like
Oh,
the way
it's
it
great.
was looked at and the way people were reacting to it, and you could just imagine putting some commentary over it and like, oh, that's gone now.
Oh my god, he's going in for a suplex.
Suplex City.
Oh, I may have an idea for the next Kawaii-Fi
I
quest.
think we might have to do that.
Yes.
But look, this is a show that if you've enjoyed Konosuba and you like the sort of gag manga style where they take something and then completely kind of shift it a little bit off kilter, you'll
slight
enjoy it.
subversion, yes.
I also found out actually that the main voice actors sing the opening theme as well, which suddenly makes a lot of
Awesome.
sense because it's like it's a wrestling style theme.
And
so
even if you've never seen pro wrestling, which
I don't
I
think
highly
you need
recommend
to.
you. No, I think everyone should have a look.
Oh, no,
it is knocked a lot because it's,
but it's about the
sports
performance.
entertainment. But
Yeah.
yeah, like what these people go through is like there's nothing short of amazing, and this guy might be your perfect introduction to it.
Might be,
Okay.
actually, yes.
Well, either way, you don't have to have seen wrestling to appreciate it. I
No,
think that's the
you
key
don't.
point here. It's pretty hilarious, and you've got this big, buff guy who's all obsessed with having animals, and he's in a world where there's demon animals
And people
beasts.
hate them and want to hunt them down, and he feels so terrible about that.
Yeah, so
So
he
he's
beats
like
them up.
he doesn't beat the animals up. He
No,
beats the people
beats the people up.
Yeah, he keeps on like
I don't know.
sending them into walls.
He did suplex a Cerberus, so
And then
yeah, but
cuddled it. And
that was
yeah.
just part of the
Just
the
roughhousing.
domination sort of thing. And then
Okay.
once the Cerberus understood that he was the alpha, it was like, scratch my belly.
Anyway, which then brings us to one that everyone's been waiting on, and they've done a great job of it. My Hero Academia, the 4th season of this
Yeah.
non-stop train of fun is back.
And it's still got all the heart right in the right place.
It does.
as
So
well.
I do have to mention, though, the first episode of the new season is not actually from the manga. This is a completely original episode.
Oh, wow.
And I wonder if that is because they realize some people might be coming on board on that first episode and don't know who all the characters are or their abilities. So that's why there's the introduction of who's in each seat and what their abilities are and their interactions.
I liked
That'd be pretty
that
thoughtful.
because some of the minor characters that you don't get to see so often, I was like, what do they do again?
Mm-hmm.
It looked like the guy who can create get tape out of his elbows. I had
Oh,
wondered
yeah.
what that was.
Cello.
Like it looked like sellotape, and obviously his name's Cell. I just wanted it to be confirmed. That's all.
That is the one charming thing I love about this show is you get a bunch of heroes and you're like, okay, this is the top class for superheroes in a world of superheroes. What are these guys with these weird little quirky quirks doing here? But then when you actually see them in action, you're like, oh, that's really clever.
They really do think out the way the characters are actually going to behave and how they're going to utilize those quirks. I mean,
they
it's
do.
probably one of the most diverse, ability-wise show I've seen. I mean, don't get me wrong, I read a lot of Marvel comics, and when you see them, you kind of go, okay, there's a lot of repeat and copy paste and similar abilities. This one just goes completely
These abilities can
wall.
be anything.
Mhm.
There is a guy who can create camera lenses anywhere on his body, for example.
Yeah, which is
Like,
the
you will
first
never.
episode
I
of
don't
the
think
season.
you'll ever see that anywhere else.
No, you will not.
Yeah.
And there's other people who've got abilities which would be considered completely useless. So it's like, well, okay, how do they utilize that? And then, whoa, you did that with that?
It's trust Japan to take the whole superhero genre and just twisted in a way we could never see coming.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
No, but I mean, we should probably talk about what we're doing this episode because we are getting closer to a certain time of the year.
Oh,
There's pumpkins and creaky decorations are filling the shops again, and that means Halloween is on the horizon.
Yes!
Wait, what's this?
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Okay, Kenny. This isn't Christmas, and put the kazoo down, damn it.
You know what? If Coles can start putting out Christmas decorations during Halloween, we can claim that this is a Halloween carol. And I'm going to do just that.
Halloween Carol.
Halloween Carol.
I'm starting a thing. This is the thing. I'm doing it.
Halloween
Cannot
carols.
stop me.
Okay, well, Japan
Right.
might not celebrate Halloween in the same way as it is in the US, but many of the unique occult characters we associate with Halloween have ended up as part of the anime scene. Now, this is from zombies and werewolves to demons and gods. There's no shortage of these series featuring ideas which do have those roots in Western horror. And for this Halloween special, we're talking about one of the most well-known and sometimes overused tropes in the business. The bloodsuckers, the creatures of the night, the crypt dwellers of society.
Lawyers.
No, this episode is all about vampires.
Close.
Right after
Pretty
the
much
news.
the same thing.
Making headlines.
Really?
Sort of.
Anime news.
Lupin meets Godzilla and big news for Studio Ghibli fans. This is Kawaii-Fi Anime News. The list of animated films being considered for next year's animated feature film at the Academy Awards have been unveiled, with 4 Japanese productions making the list. Makoto Shinkai's Weathering With You and Studio Trigger's Promare have both been included on the list of 32 films, alongside the likes of Toy Story 4, How to Train Your Dragon 3 and Disney's Frozen 2. Joining this year's big hitters are last year's Oko's Inn by Madhouse and Studio 4 Degree C's Children of the Sea, both of which saw success in Japanese cinemas and had international releases. The extensive list will be cut to just 5 films in time for the 92nd Academy Awards for February next year. The official Twitter account for Toho's Godzilla franchise have shared an image featuring a crime notice from Lupin III, claiming the thief will steal the treasure of Godzilla. The 3-meter tall statue of Godzilla is inspired by 2016's Shin Godzilla film, with Lupin claiming in anime fashion that he'll make his move on the big kaiju's 65th birthday on November the 3rd. The event is part of a promotional campaign for the upcoming CG film Lupin III The First, which is being distributed by Toho in December this year, though exactly what will happen on November the 3rd is unclear. Staying with the Lupin franchise, a new TV special will premiere on November 29th, titled Lupin III Prison of the Past. The special will focus on the Lupin gang infiltrating the kingdom of Dorente to rescue a famous gentleman thief from prison. It's been reported the special will take on a more comedic tone of the second Lupin III series, which ran from 1977 to 1980 and known colloquially as the Red Jacket series. Broadcast of this season's isekai series, The Hero is Overpowered but Overly Cautious, has been delayed by a week due to circumstances related to production advancement. The delay was announced through the anime's website, with the series' second episode being repeated in place of its third episode. The series is set to continue its broadcast schedule, with the third episode airing on October 23rd. Heading to the bookshelves, Jun Miyazuki is launching a new manga project this November, following the end of her series After the Rain earlier this year. The new series, titled Kowloon Generic Romance, will appear in Shueisha's weekly Young Jump magazine on November the 7th. The promotional material features a short-haired girl with glasses in a blue and white Chinese-style dress having a smoke. And after 23 years, the Pocket Monsters manga is coming to an end. Based on the Pokemon game franchise, the series by Kosaku Anukobu ended on October 15th in Kurokuro Comics, finishing off its Sun and Moon story arc. Unlike the animated series, the comedy manga followed Red and his Clefairy, who could communicate in human speech. But while this manga is ending, Pokemon is getting a new manga running in the same magazine starting November 15. Also titled Pocket Monsters. There's been no word on the author or team behind the new manga of the same name, taking over the exact same spot in the magazine as the prior series, but the art style of the announcement for the new series is suspiciously similar to Kosaku Anukobu's now ended series, so we'll see what happens there. In dub news, isekai wrestling anime Kimono Michi is receiving an English dub, with the translation appearing on Funimation starting this Wednesday. The series is based on the manga written by Akatsuki Natsumo, also known for Konosuba and Isekai Quartet. And finally, HBO Max and US anime distributor G-Kids have announced the entire Studio Ghibli film library will be heading to the streaming service in 2020. It's the first time the renowned studio's films have been available on any streaming platform, and will launch the new HBO streaming service in spring in the Northern Hemisphere. Oddly, the announcement came only 2 days after G-Kids had told that Studio Ghibli had no plans to stream its films on any platform. And that's your anime news for the week ending October 20, 2019.
Well, I'm confused.
Yeah.
I'm used to Ghibli changing their mind. I mean, how many times has Miyazaki said he was going to retire?
How many times has Miyazaki actually retired?
That's a fair point.
I can't wait for Miyazaki Jun's new release. I loved After the Rain, and I still haven't read all of it because...
Well, we've only got up to, I think, volume 5 in the English translation now, so it's...
such a beautifully told story.
But that ended in March this year, so the new one should be out next month, and it looks like it's going to be a more mature story as far as the character age goes, as opposed to high school girls. These people do look like they're probably like adults, like, you know, in working environments or whatever.
Okay.
Nice.
Well, it looks pretty cool.
Can't
I'm
wait.
pretty excited.
Cannot
but
wait.
Lupin,
He's
What, is he
pulling up
going
a
to
daring heist.
what's
into
he,
the
what's
real
he going
world.
to nick again?
he says it's the treasure of Godzilla. I don't know
so
what
my
that
mind
means.
just went somewhere very...
Yes, I
I'm
thought
not
it
going to
might.
mention his crown jewels or something.
Well, I'm wondering if it might be like an award potentially that the Godzilla franchise has won, or like a trophy or something like that. It would be very much in the sort of Lupin trend to do something like that.
What a fantastic kind of media stunt it would be if, like, a bunch of crazy cosplayers showed up in a Fiat, just running out of the building with a sack of some unknown treasure.
Just with a big dollar sign on it.
Yes, running from, like, actual Tokyo police.
That would be amazing. I feel like the marketing team has just outdone themselves
I
with
think
this.
they might actually do this. This is
Oh,
definitely
this-
what's going to happen, and I'm putting November the 3rd in my calendar.
If
to keep
anyone
an eye
wants
out.
to like fly us over there to cover the event live, just saying, we wouldn't say no.
Smash that like button.
Oh god! If you're listening, Nippon Airways, we very much appreciate some all-expense return flights.
Sponsor us,
Yes.
please.
Thanks, Toho.
Yeah, I do wonder what he's gonna nick.
I think it's going to be interesting. We'll find out, and we'll let you know once we know.
Oh, I can't
Absolutely.
wait.
It'll definitely be on our Facebook, that's for sure.
I feel like it's gonna go further than the Storm Area 51 thing.
Well, I mean, that did happen, and it was an utter disappointment and a bit silly.
That was funny.
Anyway, on the note of aliens and the occult and strange, we do need to talk about vampires.
Da-da-da-da.
Kawaii-Fi Radio.
Anime history.
So basically, whether they enjoy looking at crucifixes or not, whether they run from garlic or
Whether
not,
they sparkle.
whether they sparkle or not, and also I've got a little bit of a fun fact, whether you can see one in a mirror or not, which you would be able to see these days because mirrors used to be made out of silver nitrate, but now they're made out of mercury. So a vampire will be visible in a modern day mirror.
You now have
That's
learned a
pretty
thing,
cool.
audience.
Yeah, I don't see where the silver comes from.
Well,
but
we are looking at the origins of vampires in anime.
Da-da-da-da.
yes, and we have to, of course, go a little bit further back.
Do we?
Yes.
Oh, I would never have thought that.
So of course, like that.
Well,
Well,
of course, this is a segment about anime history.
Yes, it
is. Obviously, the Japanese folklore doesn't have the same vampire as the Transylvanian folklore, but all around the world, there are myths and stories about spirits or undead or monsters that feed on the blood of the living.
Funny how that actually happens, isn't it? How there's
Yeah.
a sort of a shared consensus of monsters, whether it's vampires or dragons.
Yeah.
Or
It's like-
zombies as well, like
Exactly.
the undead.
There's a
And-
shared kind of a notion of this is a terrifying thing all around the world.
I blame Robinson Crusoe.
I feel like maybe the vampire bats may have had something to do
Yeah.
with this. But in Japanese folklore, a similar entity to the Transylvanian vampire did exist. It was called the Nureona. It was actually a yokai with the head of a woman and the body of a snake. And it consumed humans using a long snake-like tongue.
I must have seen that 1,000 times in like Final Fantasy games and such.
Yeah.
They're scary looking.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, it's appeared in anime films as well, which we'll get to later.
Yes, it has. In some myths, she'd hand her unsuspecting prey a bundle that they'd think was a baby, but then it would become steadily heavier, preventing them from running away, and she'd get them.
It's a trap.
Yes. So Japanese anime didn't feature vampires until, well, from what I could tell in my research, the mid-80s. But Japanese live-action films did feature them earlier, and this came partly because of the success of the Universal Studios vampire films with Bela Lugosi, and especially the British Hammer films, which starred, of course, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
So we're talking about all these retro films where, you know, your
50s.
old school 50s films where you had essentially what they were talking about in Michael Jackson's Thriller video clip.
Absolutely.
Where it's looking at those old school style films, the
ghouls
horror
and
ones.
ghosts.
the
Yeah,
ghouls,
it's Hammer horror films. You could run a podcast just on those. They are fantastic.
Absolutely. And some of the live-action Japanese vampire films they influenced.
Wait. There are live-action Japanese vampire films from the 60s.
The 50s. So 1956 is the first one, because Hammer Films and Universal Studios started their vampire films in 1931 with Dracula. Hammer Films followed not too long after. And the first Japanese film that's cited as containing a vampire is Kyoketsuki ga, which means vampire moth. And it's about a professional artist model who's being stalked by a masked man. The thing is, so there was just the premise of a vampire. It's not actually a supernatural being, but 3 years...
When it was called a moth, was he actually like dressed as a Mothman? Or?
To be honest, I couldn't really
I'm thinking
find
like
a lot
Mothra.
out. It was a mask. The man's mask looked similar, but I'm gonna have to watch this because I want to watch these. They sound great. The director Nobuo Nakagawa made an incredibly campy one 3 years later, called Lady Vampire, and then in the 70s. Influenced by Hammer Films. I have to mention these films. We'll get onto the anime soon, but these films just look campy as. So the first one was The Bloodthirsty Doll, which has a few names, renamed by US distributors as The Vampire Doll or Legacy of Dracula. It has nothing to do with Dracula.
Does it have anything to do with dolls?
Well... I need to watch them to find out, because not a lot could be found out through researching.
Okay, so we don't know if it's literally like Chucky, but it's a vampire.
Yeah. So the second one, 1971, Bloodthirsty Eyes, renamed by US distributors again as Lake of Dracula. Did not, again, have Dracula, but anyway.
I think it's that obsession with US distributors with linking anything vampire-based to Dracula because it's got that recognition.
Yes.
Pretty much.
And, I mean, the third one, this is known as the Bloodthirsty Trilogy, and although it's marketed as a trilogy, they aren't connected. And the only similarity they have is they all feature vampires. The last one is The Bloodthirsty Rose, renamed by US distributors as Evil of Dracula. Again, no Dracula.
This is sounding a little bit like Full Moon Films and their Robot Jocks trilogy.
Charles Band Productions.
Yeah, why? All three of them have nothing related to each other.
There's a website called Maria Reviews, and they suggest that those 3 films were the director Yamamoto's attempt at copying the Hammer films, The Vampire Lovers, Lust for a Vampire, and Twins of Evil. I want these kinds of films to come back. I want to see good mainstream camp. Is that an oxymoron, though? Can you have good mainstream camp?
I think it only can become mainstream after it's become a cult classic.
Yeah.
Sort of like Rocky Horror.
I think you can have good camp. I'm not sure if it can ever be mainstream, because then it's sort of
not camp, is it?
Is it?
Well, I
don't
don't
know.
think like you can make things fairly campy without needing for it to be with it being mainstream or without it being mainstream. It's a different kind of thing altogether. I'd say it depends on how well the production quality goes and whether it's taking the mickey out of something or whether it is trying to seriously do it and failing. That's kind of going to be the definition. So whether it if it's campy and good. It's a good film. If it's just bad, then
Satisfied with that.
The 70s were nuts for vampire films, basically. Anyway, I digress.
you do.
1985, Vampire Hunter D, which is an animated OVA.
So that's the first one.
The first one I could find.
Ooh. Because we are talking about Vampire Hunter D a little later in full.
Yes,
but
we
the
are.
fact that that's actually the first one, and that's not technically just a vampire film, it's a futuristic sci-fi vampire film.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's got a lot of different
It's got a lot in
things
it, yeah.
Yeah, my research on the thing found that vampires would appear sporadically in various series, but
Sort of as like Monster of the Week thing?
kind of, yes, as various villains or little things to stop the villains. I'm sorry, to stop the heroes. I believe there was an entire movie about it on the Dr. Slump thing.
Oh.
And you know who directed Vampire Hunter D's 1985 version?
No.
Toyo Ishida, who worked on Dr. Slump. Also worked on Tezuka's film Cleopatra. Remember that one we talked about where it's all
Yeah.
about... Yeah. He
Everything
also
is
worked on
connected.
Inuyasha and Grenadier.
Really?
Hey.
Yes.
I don't understand how you go from those sort of very occult genres to...
But can you sort of see there's a bit of a similarity with the animation?
Oh, yeah,
across those?
definitely.
Yeah, it's because he got his influence for animation from Dr. Slump.
Ah, well, there you
Yes. So it is actually mentioned as being one of the first animated films specifically aimed at male teens and adults because its graphic depictions of violence.
go. That'd be about right, actually. Now, I mean, we do have to point out that the film we mentioned, Vampire Hunter D, and we will talk about it in full, but it's not for kids.
Oh, no.
And some of the stuff we're going to talk about, because it is Halloween, we are talking horror elements, so rated, T for a little bit naughty.
Naughty. Is that how we're rating things? It's naughty.
Well,
so it's a little bit of
T for teen.
So without the little
And
bit of
15
T,
plus.
it's just naught.
Yeah, sure.
We're
why
just a
not?
naught show the
We're
rest
just
of the
a naught
time.
show.
So this was also reimagined in 2001 by Yoshiaki Kawajiri, who directed a segment called Program in The Animatrix, which you might have seen.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the reimagining of Vampire Hunter D.
Not only that, but there was a similar collection to the Animatrix following The Dark Knight, the Batman series, which was a very similar take. A bunch of different animators animating different stories for that, exactly like Animatrix. And yeah, he also did one for that as well, Batman versus Deadshot.
Oh,
it was
wow.
fantastic.
Fair
Wonderful.
enough.
He's got quite a distinctive style, very contrasting shadows. 1988 was an OVA, and 1997 was an anime called Vampire Princess Mew.
I
I've
know
heard
this
of
one.
that,
yes.
yeah.
She's born of a god demon called a Shinma and a vampire, and she is basically a guardian whose purpose is to banish lost Shinma.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of these films that kind of popped up out of there, but when was kind of the first big series? Was this it?
Well, I would...
I believe it actually was, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
'Cause I think everything before that was like, 2 or 3 episode OVAs and so on.
Yeah,
Pretty much, and,
97 was the anime of this one.
And a main villain in the original JoJo, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. We will reach that very shortly. 'Cause the next one I was going to mention was the 2000 anime Blood, The Last Vampire.
Yes,
Yes.
that one's had like a bunch of different sequels, spin-offs, mangas, live-action movies.
You see, I really do think that as soon as we hit 2000, because that's also the time when the Blade films were coming
I
out.
loved those films.
Now,
Yeah.
they did surprisingly well in Japan.
Not only Blade, there was also Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Yep.
Angel. There was a lot of
It was a
vampire
big
stuff.
vampire
Sabrina
renaissance
the
period.
Teenage Witch, does that count?
I'm not sure if it
It's a
does.
cult.
It's a cult, but
I reckon
It's
that goes
fluffy,
towards.
but it was still a cult.
I reckon that goes towards the prior generation, which were pretty obsessed with the occult and angels specifically.
Yeah, it's more to do kind of with like I guess you could call like the Archie style of comics, like where it's
Yeah.
it's the wholesome goodness.
I think I think these things sort of go through trends. These days, it's Vikings for some reason.
Yeah.
They're everywhere in entertainment. But yeah, back then for vampires, it was like a huge thing.
It was, and I mean we do see a lot of. From that 2000 point onwards, a lot of vampires appearing in anime. I mean, like some of the big examples that come to mind straight away are Lunar Legend Tsukihime, which was based off a game from which we'll discuss in a bit. You then have Rosario Vampire, which is a few years after that, and the trend keeps turning and accelerating until we were getting almost a vampire show every season.
There was one I was quite a fan of in 2005 called Trinity Blood. I don't think I've really shared that one with
Was
you
this
guys.
around the time Twilight was big?
No, this is before.
This predates Twilight by a fair way, actually.
It does.
Because I feel like Twilight was 2007.
I know that the book was
late.
released at like way back then, but wasn't really popularized until
yeah.
way later.
And I can let you know that Twilight didn't do very well in Japan.
No.
It did distinctly average, like what you'd expect of a Western film appearing there, which didn't have a big cult following.
I would argue that they had a superior model to it in a series called Vampire Night. It was a love triangle between a human girl and two lovely, gorgeous, sparkling vampires.
I recently rewatched Twilight.
Oh,
Just on a
no.
bit of an off.
Dun, dun, dun.
The production quality for that film is
Look,
through the roof. It is stunning. The
I can't
cinematography is
disagree.
beautiful.
Like from a cinematic point, from a production point
Yeah.
of view, they did really well for the film.
The
It's
dir-
just a shame everything else
The
let it down.
direction, the script, the editing, all those just needed to be tweaked,
To
and it
be
would
honest,
have been
the
better.
acting as well needed to be tweaked. I
Oh
mean,
my
admittedly, that
gosh.
does come down to
Yeah.
the directors. They are the people
Yeah,
who are
the
involved in
director-
Twilight aren't bad actors.
Yeah.
Robert Pattinson is a fine actor. You see him in like a lot of his other works, and he knocks it out of the park.
I haven't seen Kristen Stewart in anything else, but I have heard she's good as well. But I would have, like, if I was a director, I would have picked up on a few things.
You don't say.
Just, I'm not going to mention what they are, but you know, I feel like it could have done better than it could.
Things that
it
could
did.
have been tweaked, and you'd think that maybe what happened was because they thought it was going to be such a big success because of the books, that they
Yeah.
kind of let the director just have their way with it.
So you're saying that if you were directing it, you'd direct.
Yeah, and I'd be hovering. I'd be one of those annoying hoverers. I'd just be like, no, change that. Oh, what are you doing over here, sound guy? What are you doing over here, editing person?
Oh, if it
I'd
gets
be
the job
all over it completely.
But you'd be like, no, you keep doing what you're doing, 3D effects guy. You're pretty good.
Honestly,
Choreographing dude,
like-
you do what you're doing. You're pretty good.
Actually,
Scriptwriter, come here.
yeah, script. And like the cinematography for the most part was great. What I felt like didn't work were the bit where he saves her from the truck. Sorry guys, we'll continue with anime in a second, but I just have to get this off my chest. The bit where he saves her from the truck that just suddenly goes to side smash her.
Well, I can't say I know because I haven't watched it. I've just
should-
seen bits and pieces.
Like the way that it was edited, I feel like it could have gotten it across if it was edited to be faster. Like an Edgar Wright sort of fast. Like bang, bang, bang. Oh, hang on, what happened? Because that's, if you've ever been
Is
in a
it
car
kind of
crash,
like
that's what it's like.
a slow sliding truck?
You just watch what's happening and you're like, oh, the truck's sliding. Oh, she's worried. Oh, he's rocking up. Oh, he's obviously strong enough to like hold it away from her. But it's a car crash.
So
you don't
it feels
see
like
these
the
happening.
early
It's not.
early superhero films where they slow down the action as opposed to having it as quick
You
shot.
do not get
It
me
was
started
almost
on
so slow
slow-mo.
that you could inject a, well, yep, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I got it.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we
Anyway.
digress. Apologies,
So,
listeners.
Continuing on. So, Blood, the Last Vampire was adapted into a live action in 2009. Haven't seen that either.
Seen bits of it, quite good. Good production value.
Okay.
No, I
We'll have
have
to watch it.
seen because there's Blood Plus. There's
That's an anime series which follows it to season 1. Pretty good.
Yeah.
I like it.
And then there's also Blood the Last Vampire, Blood Plus, Blood C, which is not related to either of them, but once again is vampire based and came out around the same time.
Yeah. 2006, we saw Hellsing Ultimate come out,
When
which
was-
followed
now-
the manga more closely than the previous anime.
When was the original Hellsing? Because I feel like I watched that when I was getting into my original run of anime. Same sort of thing goes with Lunar Legend Tsukihime. So I feel like it was 2003, 2004.
I feel like it was
Ish.
potentially even earlier.
Because that was a show which, when you went to cons and things like that, everyone was talking about it. It was kind
I
of
remember
a big
Hellsing
deal.
Abridged.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was introduced to it by, I think, both of you guys.
Wait, I've got it here. The Hellsing original anime was 2001.
2000. Okay, so yeah, back smack bang in that period.
Yeah, I remember seeing that on TV back in Margaret River.
I think it was on SBS, yeah.
yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was once again in one of those late night anime slots. And it was one of those shows which everyone just kind of seemed to know of it. And then they brought out Ultimate, and everyone was kind of, if you hadn't read the manga, you were kind of like, what is this? And if you had read the manga, you were like, yes!
So obviously this list isn't exhaustive.
No.
I can't go through all of them, but
There's dozens,
2009, Bakemonogatari, Koyomi Araragi was just your everyday, average, normal high school student until
Vampires?
he gets turned into a vampire.
Oh!
Da-da-da-da.
2012, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure not only is Dio Brando the world's worst stepbrother, he's a vampire as well.
It's also the world's
which came
worst
out of
vampire
nowhere a
too.
little bit.
Oh, he's such a... Oh, my gosh, Dio. Anyway,
You don't say no to Dio.
You thought you were getting a charming villain, but it was me,
Oh.
Dio.
2013. I want to see this because it looks hilariously
On-
ridiculous,
is-
called Strike the Blood.
Yep.
Kojo Akatsuki was, you guessed it, just your everyday, average, normal high school student until it is revealed he is a super powerful vampire and he gains a harem.
Of course he does.
Yeah.
So, there's
like that.
plenty of others that you can roll off on that have popped up and disappeared because, you know, they were kind of done to promote the original material. Like there's Dance in the Vampire Bund, which is...
Oh, yeah, I read about
Seraph
that.
at the End.
Oh, that was
That was
we
what
actually
I was
really
coming
quite
to
enjoyed.
next, actually, because I liked that too.
And the manga is still ongoing, and it's gotten quite far in. It's actually pretty interesting.
And I've got something to add as well.
Oh.
Special mention first to Myotismon from Digimon.
You what?
Myotismon from Digimon.
Laotismon.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Digimon monster.
Oh, yeah, the vampire Digimon
Yeah.
monster. Yeah, yeah.
I almost forgot
And
about
2019's Arifureta.
Oh,
Please.
And we have complained about this show, but I've done a complete 180 on it. It's
Look.
I don't know, it's just charmed me.
Look.
I don't know how.
episode 9, that's all I'm saying. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm actually in the same boat with you. I will see where this goes in season 2 when that comes out next year.
How much of that anime's budget was spent on just
Yeah,
that?
I know.
Oh my
I
gosh,
know.
it's just I love like you can enjoy things because of the budgetary constraints. Like Red Dwarf, perfect example, and it still worked with the world building. This is a bit different though.
No.
We enjoy it because it's
Bad.
I'm going to leave this one to you guys.
We will
I'm-
review it for
on
on your
episode.
behalf.
Just gonna say one thing. There is one area where they did probably break the budget in episode 9. Just have a watch. Let us know where you think it
In the
was.
most uncomfortable place they could.
And that is the end of my inexhaustive list of vampire
Vampires.
anime.
Now, this does bring us to an interesting point because there is so much to talk about that has vampire elements in it. There
Absolutely.
are shows which have vampires and werewolves and zombies and others in it. But we thought we'd go down the path of exclusively looking at vampire films and series. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the first sort of major vampire film and the books associated, which is Vampire Hunter D. And we're also going to talk about Lunar Legend Tsukihime, which is something to do with the Fate Stay Night series. We didn't actually realise this when we first saw it, but we'll explain more in just a minute.
Kawaii-Fi Radio.
I think I watched that as a kid.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Back Catalogue.
Yes, Lunar Legend Tsukihime. This is a show which I found when I was getting kind of right bang into the middle of my love for animation.
It was actually one of the first ones you and a bunch of your mates introduced me to when I first got into the city, actually.
Yeah, and I mean it's a series which I don't know why, but it just has stuck with me. And it's not perfect by no means, but it has got a lot of important stuff
From
in
a
it.
game, right?
Yeah, and I didn't even realise this till we were researching it. So, the summary, Lunar Legend Tsukihime focuses on a young boy named Tono Shiki, and he suffered a life-threatening injury and become able to see death lines on objects and people as a result of this.
Now, what are death lines?
Now, if Shiki traces these lines with a sharp object, the person or object they belong to will die or be destroyed. We're talking literally like, you can imagine seeing like a grid work of patterns over a chair, and you point, cut one of those lines on that chair, and the chair disintegrates where those lines are.
Poor chair.
So, yeah, poor chair. I miss you, wood chair. You had my heart inside you.
You held
I
my
liked
bum for so many years.
I
and now
liked
all
to
I've
knock
done
on you.
is-
So soon after discovering this power, he's given a special pair of glasses by a mysterious woman, which prevent him from seeing the lines and, let him live a normal life so he doesn't see them all the time.
Yeah.
And
So he wasn't meant to be able to see these lines.
not necessarily. He's also unable to kind of really remember anything that happened in the time before the accident as well.
Mysterious.
Yeah, very mysterious. The day he moves back to the Tono household, and just to clarify this, when he goes through this accident, he's then sent off to live with a family member away.
Which is his older sister.
No, that's who he comes back to.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because it's been a while since you've caught it. I've actually got the DVD, so I was like, I'll just have a little casual rewatch of this. So he moves back to the household after his dad dies, and his older sister becomes the head of the family on the basis, even though he's older. Is it his older or younger sister? I keep forgetting.
Older sister.
Older sister. Either way, normally in Japanese, it's the male who becomes the head of the household, but because he's sickly, as they say, he can't become the head of the household, and she's been given that role. So the day he moves back to the household, he stumbles upon a woman named Arquade Brunstad and kills her in a temporary fit of insanity with one slash of his pocket knife.
How old is he at this point?
He's second year of high school, so he's 16.
Oh, so it's that old story. Then boy meets girl, boy kills girl.
Girl comes back from the dead and says, "You're pretty cool. Do you want to be my bodyguard?"
What the?
I'm not kidding. So Arquade later reappears alive and well and asks Shiki to be her bodyguard, and he begins his journey into the occult world of vampires.
Let me take a stab at the chair here. Arcade is a vampire.
Yes.
Hence her coming right back after.
Yeah. Now that's a bit of a funny thing. So the series focuses on two strains of the vampire race. So it's not just, vampires, like noble vampires and vampires who've been turned. You've got the true ancestors, who are quite literally another race of beings from humans. They have no direct correlation, and they are true vampires, the equivalent of noble vampires as you'd have in most of the traditional literature.
Why was he carrying a knife?
Don't know. Boy has issues.
Okay.
Well, to be fair on that question, why was he carrying a knife and then killed a random person?
Yeah.
True ancestors are a species which has evolved past the point of humanity. They're kind of referred to as like, a next evolutionary step from a different strain, but they were never human to begin with. You then also have the dead apostles, who are humans who have been turned into vampires. Arquade, from my knowledge, is a true ancestor. So she's technically not human, which explains why she can
I'm going to have to watch
reconstruct
this
herself. Yeah.
again, starting from the start, because it's ringing a bell.
Yeah.
I have watched it.
You have. I
But-
sat you down and forced you to watch it a couple of years back.
Yes,
Yeah.
a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, so I'm
So-
really going to have to get back into it.
But anyway, so this is set in the Fate Stay Night universe before the Fate Stay Night universe was even created, before the first Fate Stay Night visual novel game appeared.
Fascinating notion if you think about it.
It's originally a visual novel by Type Moon. It came out in late 2000. I think it was December in Japan, and it's never received an official Western release.
It was a pretty noteworthy game way back in the day as well.
It was a big deal.
It has a huge following
It was
online.
a big deal. This anime adaptation happened in 2003 by JC Staff, and it also received a manga series which ran for 10 volumes. The art and the music of this show, in particular, are very well done considering the time they were done in. The music in particular is of note. Like, the quality of it is as high as you would expect from a modern day animation.
Absolutely. Even the staunchest critics of this thing will praise that opening music.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you guys haven't played the game, have you?
No, but I think I'm going to have to try and track it down.
I have researched it. I've read a lot of it. There are some English translations, and I've actually had to take a look at a bunch of screenshots and stuff. And yeah, it's pretty involved. It is basically like playing a very in-depth novel. There is one scene in particular which is fascinating, which is basically your main character locking himself in his room and slowly going crazy over about a week.
Oh, sounds fun. Well, that's
I'm
not in the
assuming
show.
You didn't have internet connection.
No, this is well, it's 2003, so we would have had dial-up, and his sister would probably keep using the phone.
A week of only dial-up.
Now, now look. No more dial-up noises.
Remember that sound.
I do remember that noise very
It'll
well.
never leave you.
So, look, the characters in this show could be better developed, but you're only working with 12 episodes here. And this is where the criticism comes in, and we'll get to a rather meme-ish statement which went around regarding it. Now, Arkwade the Vampire isn't as fully developed a character as some of us would like, but there's enough there to kind of cement her as the main, focus and give you a good idea of who she is.
You mean she's missing parts, like her head?
No.
No.
It's not a way to get ahead in life.
But then there's also two other characters, Shiki's sister Akihia and Ciel, who's from the church. They both feel like their role in the story is to explain the story rather than be developed as characters.
You know what? I actually feel like you've missed out on two characters who I kind of want to draw attention to on the basis that I feel like another anime has ripped it off severely.
Okay.
His older sister has a pair of maids.
Yes.
And do we know of another anime wherein
Are these maids sisters?
they are in fact identical twins?
Oh, is there anything that separates them from being identical?
There is the one thing. One of them dresses in a Western style maid uniform. The other one dresses in a traditional Japanese style maid uniform.
Very interesting.
And they have a certain interesting occult connection as well, don't they?
They have that, but it's more.
Very
I'm thinking,
zero.
yes, exactly that.
I must have coughed too heavily when I said it earlier.
Oh, I heard it. I was just reiterating your cough.
Yeah.
Zero. No, it must be going around.
So it's very contagious, this. But I mean, that's another kettle of fish altogether. The thing is that, for only 12 episodes, there's only so much you can fit in. And when you think about the amount of text in a visual novel game, we're talking 30 to 50 hours for a single storyline. It's hard to fit that amount of detail into a show. And if you've only got 12 episodes and you're not getting a sequel, you have to do something with it where you focus on, at least one character route from the show, from the game, and then kind of explain everything as quickly as possible without it being, the exposition dance.
And that is exactly the source of a particular meme which follows this anime around like a ghost.
There is a very vocal group of light novel fans who despise the anime.
Mm-hmm.
For most viewers looking for a 12-episode show, though, this is a good anime.
Oh, no, yeah, that's the thing. For anyone who isn't a fan of this is a very solid show. Its characters are enjoyable. It's a fantastic story and stuff like that. But yeah, of course, you have the fans of the original, and
it generated a meme statement, didn't it?
Yes, the meme statement is the anime does not exist.
Yeah,
it's simply that they even on Japanese message boards, the Japanese fandom for the original anime will say that this anime, for the original light novel, they will say that this anime is a piece of dark history, or outwardly advise that there simply is no anime adaptation.
You see, that's kind of a bit elitist, though, isn't it?
It is. But I mean, I feel like it goes back to the old adage that the novel is always going to be better than the movie.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same sort of thing as like manga adaptations to anime. Sometimes you'll get ones that are bang on point, other times you won't, but they'll still be good. Prime example is the original Full Metal Alchemist, the original Hellsing even as well. While they aren't correct to the original content that they're developed from,
they are fine in their own right.
They're fantastic as a standalone product. And the issue is that, I mean, obviously we as a Western audience didn't get an official release of this game, and we didn't realize, most of the viewership, that this is an anime adapted from that. And because of that, I'll be honest, if you haven't played the game, you won't care. You'll still enjoy it.
That's the thing about the game. It has like two entire sides of the story, a bunch of the plot threads which I feel weren't really explored in the anime itself.
Oh, of course.
There is more depth put into them. Like in the last bit, there is suddenly a girl with a sword, and you're just like, where did you come from? You're that person. What the hell?
but I mean, she is hinted at throughout the show. Like, she does
Yeah.
appear every now and then. You go, okay, what's going on here?
There are subtle things, and then there's just stuff like that and going on, and just like, what? But in the original, that is explored. But there might be a bit of good news for that.
Oh.
Since around 2016, there has been official concept art floating around for a remake of the graphic novel. Sorry, the visual novel.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that doesn't necessarily solve the issue for anime fans.
The thing is that it's hinted that once the studio is done with their long-running Fate Stay Night Grand Order of the Pancake in the lower shelf, because that series is reaching a sort of a climax in a way, it's strongly suggested that they will be releasing a 2-part series for Lunar Legend, a remake.
A full remake. Okay.
It's mostly speculation at this point, but hey, the concept art is there.
You mean Fate Stay Grand Order, rubber chicken on a shelf?
Yes, I mean Fate Grand Order of the Massive Turkey.
Oh, God, here we go again.
Yep, I know
So,
that one.
anyway.
Fate Grand Order of the Smiling Vegeta t-shirt.
Fate Grand Order of the unopened Sonic
pop vinyl.
Pop vinyl
You're just
on
pointing
that
at
shelf.
things in the room now.
Literally.
Rick, are you just
That's
looking
what
at
I'm
things in
doing.
the room and saying you love them?
I love Lamp. So look, for most viewers, for a 12-episode show, this is a good anime. You will enjoy the actual run of it, the way it presents characters. But probably the most reasonable review I've spotted online anyway for it was on my anime list. And it's the top-rated one for a very good reason. It says, if you are a huge Tsukihime buff and want to know everything about it, then you won't like the anime. Fair enough. But if you just want to get in and enjoy a decent anime that won't bore you to death with details, watch the anime. Which is true. It is a show which covers the content quickly, it develops characters, it sets a very unique tone, which was then mirrored in many shows afterwards. And you know, it will always, for me, it's always going to have a special place in my heart because that connected me to a different side of animation that we didn't really see up until that point.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, it was like one of the first proper ones, which I was shown by you guys when I first came up here. And yeah, I feel like it contributed to my education on the subject. It's a pretty wacky kind of adventure, the whole thing.
I guess the final thought is quite simply, if you're looking for a visual novel, play the damn game. You know, if that's what you're after, then go play it. It's there.
I mean, the anime itself has made me interested to know what it is all about.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
maybe I'll explore that some other time. So it's done its job.
I mean, you're never going to get a faithful anime adaptation of a visual novel because it is literally a choose-your-own adventure. There are different paths and stories. You can't please everyone. You
So
know?
tell us if we're wrong.
No.
No.
It's true. Like, imagine trying to adapt one of R.L. Stein's Goosebumps choose-your-own-adventure ones.
Oh, well, there was a movie not so long ago, a live action of the board game Cluedo.
Oh, yeah.
That had Tim Curry in it as the
I heard
butler.
about that.
And that had a thing where it would end, and then a black screen would come up saying, well, it could have ended that way, or it could have ended this way. And they would play alternate endings.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it
But
was fantastic. I
That
loved it.
works for something where there are alternate endings. You've got alternative entire storylines here. Like, you know, we are talking branching dialogue. This would be like trying to turn Mass Effect franchise into a film. You're not going to please everyone with the way the character interacts and
You have
behaves.
to tell short stories.
Exactly.
singular
Precisely.
bits.
So if that's what you're after, play the visual novel. That's what it is there for. This is designed as a different medium and a different storytelling style. You can't be annoyed if that's the case. So, you know, if you're disappointed with it, fine, don't watch it.
Or reimagine it like they did with Vampire Hunter D.
Yes, that's another kettle of fish altogether. And we'll talk about that right after this.
Kawaii-Fi Radio.
We'll be there on time. There's 20 minutes of ads.
Cinema Club.
Ah, yes, Cinema Club.
That
the club
old
where we go to
time.
the cinema and wait 20 minutes before we can do something.
And it
Or just
generally
arrive
is
late.
consistently 20
It
minutes.
is.
Yeah.
So we're talking
just-
about Vampire Hunter D.
The
And
first one, of
The
course.
first one. Well, the light novel, the first one, the sequel, which isn't quite a sequel, but a reimagining and a retelling. This I didn't realize how deep this show was and how historically,
Wait.
tied it is.
Wait, I'm lost. You have to go back. What?
ignoring Kenny, Vampire Hunter D originated as a series of light novels written by Hideyuki Kikuchi and illustrated by Yoshitaka Amano.
Is his name D because he's a Dampier?
Yes, I believe so. And that started in 1983. Now, I think we mentioned earlier, 1985 was
the OVA.
OVA. Well, OVA/film, because it is an hour 40.
Yeah.
Is it hour 40 or hour 20? It's over an hour and a half. We'll put it that way.
Extensive.
I watched it again last night, and I was like, I haven't watched this before. I've watched Bloodlust, which is the reimagining.
Now, insofar as like the original novels are concerned, we are looking at 31 visual novels, some comprised of as many as 4 volumes.
Whoa.
Including the supplemental volume, that makes for a total of 44 published. Then there is the 2 animated films, an audio drama, manga adaptations, art book,
drama.
and, for like radio.
Oh.
And a supplemental guidebook to actually tell you how to actually explore that whole mess.
Now, just to clarify, when Kenny was saying visual novels, he actually means light novels.
Yes. Sorry, still confused by it.
44 volumes over 31 stories is huge.
Oh, yeah.
So that's 31 story lines, and then some of them they've spread out.
Far out, this goes
It's
a
a
lot
pretty...
deeper than I thought it
It's a
actually
pretty
did.
involved kind of a plot. There is like a whole lot of story to this. We're basically looking at like a Japanese. I don't want to make the comparison to J.K. Rowling, but like this is a
Yeah.
huge long series. And I went looking to see if I could actually find some of the light novels in the English translation. I've got some terrible, terrible news.
Well, Viz Media did have some for a while, but they've only done the prequel series.
No, if you go to Amazon and Audible, you'll find the whole damn lot.
What?
Yep.
Oh.
And
As in, like, in physical or only digital?
only digital.
Only
so
digital,
Kindle
okay.
available, but that's
That's a lot.
yeah, that is terrible news for me because I've already got enough to watch and read, damn it. And having actually read the plots for all these things, I really want to know more.
They do sound really interesting. I mean, to date, there is, 26 novels. They've been published in English since 2005, which is conveniently only a few years after that second film came out as well. So that must have obviously generated the interest and the demand.
Now, going back to the first film, we should probably give the
Yeah.
listeners an idea of the story.
So Vampire Hunter D...
He's a Dampier.
He's a Dampier, which is
Who's
half human, half vampire.
Half human,
Yes.
half vampire. It is hinted at, suggested that he is the son of one Dracula Tepesh and Mina Harker.
Yeah, so this is... I love the fact that, if you look on Wikipedia or Anime List or anything like that, it's like, it's a cult classic.
It totally is, though.
It is.
Like, it's got a very dedicated following. So,
it's a dark sort of sci-fi future... Is it dystopian?
Yeah,
I
it
feel
is
like it is.
pretty.
It is.
Like,
It's,
no one seems happy to live there.
That's not the definition of dystopian, though.
Yeah, maybe not.
in both of the
But it
movies, you
seems-
will see a theme that there are destroyed buildings. There's like ancient Greek kind of structures in some places, and there's also the very, very like neo-Victorian kind
There's
of
like
steampunkish.
and then there's like some skyscrapers chucked in there somewhere as
Yeah, like
well.
you'd see like parts of a skyscraper in a valley, almost as if they are meant to be the spike of the mountain in the valley, but they're actually just a derelict building.
And it's these little details that just make you look at it and go, what the heck happened here? I must read the novels. So the story of this one is that a young girl is bitten by a vampire. Ooh. So she is going to turn into one of them any day now. So she hires a bounty hunter, and one of the roughest, toughest, rootinest, tootinest bounty hunters there is a vampire hunter, the Dampier, known only as D.
Which,
the D.
with modern vernacular,
Oh, you
there are problems there.
You had to take it there.
What I
I
find
made
interesting
so many
is
jokes
that
when I was watching this. Sorry.
her name is Doris Lang, right? And she keeps going on about how things aren't as bad, and it just takes me straight back to Westworld and Dolores going, I like to see the beauty in things, the disarray. I'm just like, and now she's going to go off and murder someone, right?
Wonder if there was a connection there, like
I
if there was inspirations there.
wonder.
Because
That'd be cool.
There's a very Western feel to a lot of this world.
There
There
is.
is.
And I really like the fact as well that they address the fact that this is a world where hunters are a commonplace thing, and they have specializations.
Yeah,
Like a
it's-
werewolf hunter, her father was, as opposed to a vampire hunter or a ghoul hunter or anything else.
Yeah, like the destroyed world hints that something big has gone down, and humans have the capability and the knowledge for killing these kind of monsters. Bounty hunters are present to hunt down these creatures, and
that's what she wants him to protect her from, yeah?
yes,
Just any creatures that might want to...
not only to protect her, but to kill the vampire that bit her, because if he will
They have
kill
to
her,
come back to finish the job, do they?
it's that there's a sort of a time limit on it. If you are bitten by a vampire, then you have a short amount of time to kill the vampire that bit you, and if you do that, the curse is reversed.
I found it quite interesting as well because it shows a lot of awareness of the mythos around vampires. Like it's not like some of the ones we see in recent years. Prime example, Vampire in the
Dance in the
Dance
Vampire
in the
Bund.
Vampire Bund.
Yeah.
It's just like it just kind of went with whatever, and it's like I could feed on you and everything's fine. You know?
Yeah, it's like if I get some blood in me, I can regrow limbs and I have superpowers.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
That's not how it works.
Vampires have come a long way from the original lore. I believe running water was a weakness for vampires
Yeah.
at some point. Actually,
Which I always find hilarious when you had a look at Count Dracula, and it's like he's up on a hill, and then you have a look at the original version, it's just a hill. If you have a look at the modern version, it's a hill over a lake, and it's like, oh, that would be bad for him.
Don't go swimming.
there's actually a whole thing in the recent Castlevania series on Netflix, the anime, where the vampires are actually like this big council of all these powerful mystical vampires are in a room having an argument with each other on whether that's actually a thing, on whether they actually are affected by running water. It's just like, so have you tried it? Well, no, I don't want to risk my life, unlife. It's just like,
Yeah, how do you find out?
Well, you find out your mate died. He said, James, can you go down and get some water from the well?
sure thing, man. Ah, he died. And now you know.
So with the I noticed some interesting design notes, shall we say. So I saw that a number of the male antagonists reminded me of the main antagonist from Castle of Cagliostro. They were very
The
similar.
loop in the
sort of-
film.
yeah.
Yes, the antagonist is called Count Magnus Lee, and I
Yes.
actually have a bit of things for that. His name is an homage to Christopher Lee, who played Dracula in
I
the
thought
aforementioned
there
Hammer
were
films.
Hammer influences in this film. Oh,
Absolutely.
that's so good.
I think there's also like, you know, lots of unique side characters. Like I saw the son of the mayor, and I just went, you definitely belong in a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure film.
So much so.
Like it was Dio all along.
Of course, the character design is done by the legendary Amano, who people might know as the concept artist for a lot of Final Fantasy games, and he has illustrated the covers for all the vampire novels and a bunch of other things, including Speed Racer, I think.
My mum once met Christopher Lee.
Oh, humble brag.
Humble brag. But yeah,
Yeah.
that is amazing.
It was at a horse show somewhere in England, and he was that tall,
Yeah.
and he was an absolute gentleman.
He is a man that blocks out the sun.
And does metal covers of Christmas tunes.
Oh my gosh, if you haven't listened to those, you need to look them up.
They're
Why
all
don't
on
we
YouTube.
should-
We
should-
can, we will not be playing them
I want-
because we have enough trouble with
For
just
Christmas
our
we
covers
will.
getting copyright
For
strikes.
Christmas, we'll
Thank you,
just
Remy.
play it throughout wherever we are spending Christmas. And oh, that voice. Yes. So also the noble Lady Lamika. I thought that her design was quite similar to to Kyoko from Akira.
That's
That's
she
what
was a
vibe
bit
I was
very
sort
similar
of
sort of
getting.
look.
Yeah.
What year was Akira again? It was 87?
87, yes.
87. So 2 years. But so the
After.
manga would have been out for
The manga
around
was
the same
already
time.
out.
Yeah.
So there we go. But I felt like there was this. I was talking to Kenny about this earlier. There was a film I watched years ago. This really bad film. It was a Romanian production called Hideous.
Okay.
And you know how in Gremlins, you meet the human cast first, and then all of a sudden, like out of to the side, like they sort of start bubbling up and appearing. Same sort of thing. And at some point, there was some softcore elements to this film, and I felt like that was similar in Vampire Hunter D. There's some. It's not for children.
No, definitely not.
There's some interesting moments in it.
yeah. There's, I think it really interesting. What was the original Japanese serpent you mentioned?
Ah, the Nuriona.
Yeah.
Yes, there are 3 of those.
There are 3 of them that appear in the film at some point, and I was like,
they call them Medusas.
and I think that's a translation error because we don't have an equivalent.
Yeah, I would. We need to watch it again and listen to how they describe them, because they've described them as sirens and as Medusas in the translated subtitles. I'd like to, because they look like
They do. They look exactly like the traditional.
The whole thing about the presence of those kind of adultish themes and stuff like that is that this is supposed to be a take on the kind of the Hammer horror films, and it's supposed to have the kind of the gothic horror feel to it, like old gothic kind of paintings which featured that stuff very often. That's its own kind of history class in itself.
Can recommend. I think you guys should watch it. Watch 85 and then 2001 Reimagination. Very different art style.
Oh yeah,
both.
The director, when people saw the 85 one and said, "Oh, that was great, we want more," the director was like, "Oh good, I actually kind of want to make another one. The first one looked a bit cheap for me."
Go figure.
Really? Okay. Fair enough.
Also, something of note for the original one, the main 3 characters, so Doris and her brother and Dee. Dee, Doris, Dan. Everyone's name starts with the letter
Triple
D.
D.
Exactly. And it's just so silly watching it, and you go, "Oh, he's a D as well." I'm just imagining the Dr. Pepper ad, but instead of "he's a D," "he's a D," "she's
Would
a
you
D,"
like to be a D too?
I feel like this is going to degenerate into D
slinging
drama. So how about we move on?
Yes, we should. So look, if you can catch the original 1985 version, we haven't been able to find anywhere that it's streaming, at least on our end, but you can find it in a lot of old video stores. A lot of old anime retailers still do have the DVD, which you can get hold of, and it's a good hour 20 of your time.
The DVD.
And with bricks and mortar video DVD stores,
yeah,
they are running out. They are becoming more rare. So give them your business.
Monies.
Give them your monies.
Support your local business.
Yes.
Anyway, we should wrap up because we have reached that time again.
Kawaii-Fi Radio.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Next episode, we are going with Studio Ghibli. Finally heading to a streaming service, it's time to have an in-depth look at where this award-winning studio came from. It's our first Studio in Focus episode, and the house Miyazaki built is in focus.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
And of course, there'll be more Kawaii-Fi Quest.
Masato approves.
Don't forget to head over to our Facebook page for breaking anime news and videos.
You've been listening to Kawaii-Fi Radio. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time,
Watch some anime.